Today, I want to talk a little bit about technology and the Amish, but I don't want to talk about it from this time period here. I had a very interesting, great question from one of my subscribers, and the question is up here on the board. Was there technology that Amish wouldn't use 200 years ago? So while we know it's pretty obvious today how they reject computers and telephones and gaming devices and different things like that, what were they rejecting 200 years ago? So I thought this was a great question, and I dug in a little bit. I found 6 different things that I thought we would dig into a little bit about what was invented in the last 150 to 200 years ago, and were they rejected or were not? Not all inventions were rejected. We have electricity. The car was invented in 1886. You'll be interested to see what that looked like. Telephone was invented 1876. Fountain pen, 1884. Rubber bands and lawnmowers. So let's dig in a little bit and figure out which ones do they use, which ones were rejected. I wanted to start with the telephone because that's the one that seems to be the most prevalent thing we think of when the Amish don't use something. The telephone was actually invented in 1876. Now, there's a lot of question about who invented it, who got credit. Alexander Graham Bell seems to get credit. There was some inventing going on before then, but he's the one that patented. So please don't get on and argue about dates, because a lot of times it has to do with patents and things like that. That's not what we're talking about. But roughly in that time period. It's interesting to know that the Amish did start using the telephone, and it wasn't banned until 1910. The bishops got together and felt like the Amish having telephones in their home was actually detrimental to the family. Now think about your own family. How much time are we spending on the phone? Even those of you that had phones connected to the wall years ago, 60s, 70s, 80s, where I grew up, we were on the phone a lot, and it does take away from that family time. So they decided in their Ordung, which is like a law, and I'm sorry if I said that word wrong, but they decided, the bishops, that this was something taken away from the family. So it really is not permitted in the home in most of the Amish orders. The old Amish orders are a little bit more strict. They do allow the phone if you're using it for business or if you're trying to call family members and things like that. But there has to be a specific purpose, not to get on the phone and gossip and talk about things. Now, your new Amish, which are a little bit more progressive, do allow some of them to have it in the home. So again, you always have the different rules with the different sects. Very quickly, I wanted to discuss what is an Amish Ordung. It is an unwritten set of rules and regulations that guide everyday Amish life, meaning order or discipline. So this German word takes on a deeper meaning with the Amish. It provides the foundation for the Amish Christian community. So they have these rules to help them live their life as a Christian and to adhere to that lifestyle. All right, so let's talk now about electricity. Again, electricity was invented in the 1800s, and by the 1890s, it was pretty much being installed in people's homes. In the beginning, when any invention first comes out, they usually target businesses and wealthy people because they have the money to pay those high prices. I don't know if anybody remembers when the first calculators came out. They were like $100. Now they're like a quarter. They're like throwaways. So anytime a new invention comes out, they are more expensive. So once they could get it down to where it was feasible, they were starting to put them in homes by the 1890s. Now, many of your Amish people were installing the electricity in their homes. It was okay. And it wasn't until 1920 that the bishops decided to reject it. They felt like people were starting to become assimilated into the culture and they needed to stop it. So I want to real quickly, when you talk about assimilation, if you even go into the Bible, back in Exodus, when Moses was told to lead his people, the Israelites, out of Egypt, and then they were going to the promised land, you can read all the way through Exodus into Judges. Over and over again, you'll see where God told the people, do not assimilate, do not intermarry, do not, basically in our terms, it would be stay with like-minded people. Do not let them encourage you to take on what they're doing. And a lot of them were worshiping pagan gods and things like that. So this goes back into biblical times, not to assimilate. Another thing that was developed during that time in the late 1800s were cars. Now, I could not find the exact date when the Amish rejected the car, so maybe they did start using it because it seems to be that same time period, and maybe the same thing happened. The bishop said, we're not doing this. Why would a car be bad? And one of the things that I found as I was looking up all this stuff is their biggest thing is they want to preserve their community and preserve their traditions. And think about it. When you get into a car, that allows you to drive several miles, hundreds of miles away from your home. And again, you start losing that assimilation into your tight-knit community. Across America, back in the, even as late as 50s and 60s, being part of your community was very important. And I think we've lost a lot of that within our culture, but the Amish have not. They still are very tight-knit. They take care of each other, and that community is very, very important. And of course, our last three inventions were the fountain pen, the rubber band, and the lawnmower. All three of those are allowed. However, the lawnmower has to be pushed. They can't ride mowers, but they can push them, and they can use gas to push them and mow. Before that, they did that by hand using that big scythe. So that helped them with their work. And bottom line, each time something is rejected is whether or not it's going to affect their traditions and their community. Those are just a few. Again, thank you for that question. I thought it was an excellent question because, again, we erroneously think that, they said we are going to preserve our culture during this time period. And it's not like that. Each time a new invention comes up, they discuss it and they decide whether or not they will integrate it. Again, thank you for that question.